Hello, everyone, and welcome to the August 2021 edition of the EPA's Insights Interview. And don't forget, this is your chance to get the inside track from one of the country's leading payments executives. And this month, I'm joined by someone who's already achieved the dream of every fintech entrepreneur to achieve a successful exit. And he's done it very recently, so it's really hot off the press. Peter was the CEO of ID Data, the first company I worked with in payments in 2004. And he's a guy who's always been ahead of the curve, and as well as a consistent supporter of the EPA community. So for his first in-depth interview after the announcement, please welcome to share a little about himself and his farmhouse in the background and his success secrets, the executive chairman of Contis Group, Peter Cox. Welcome, Peter.
Hi, Tony. Lovely to see you. And, it's a privilege to be asked at long last to pass comment on something.
Yeah, very, very good. So look, thank you for being happy to pass comment, share your thoughts, your insights with the community. You're someone who's never been afraid of shaking the tree a little bit and challenging the status quo. You've achieved a great deal. You've built a company over the long term to now become the UK's latest Paytech success story. So my question that I think the audience will be fascinating to hear the answer to is, what is it that still motivates you every day, day in, day out, 13 years after starting Contis and 40 years after starting out in payments?
Well, frankly, it's the excitement of change. One of the things I've found wonderful about payments is there's such a lot of change and it's happening so quickly. In fact, it's accelerating. So this means that if you have a brain and you want to use it, every day somebody poses you a new problem and it's like a big puzzle and you have to work your way through it, which I really enjoy. It's also, I think now the challenges are very different to they were, 40 years ago. 40 years ago, you sent letters and you sent faxes, maybe. Now it's all instant. It's instant problem, instant gratification. So the world's different. So that's exciting. And for me, it's quite interesting. Money's never been the motivation. It's been achievement of the goals that you set. And I think if you work that way, it's fun. If you keep thinking about how much money you can make, then it's very boring.
Yeah, I sometimes think that if you focus on the money, that doesn't happen. But if you focus on the outcome, then the money just comes.
I think it's very true. And if you look at some of the most successful people in the world, that's what's happened to them. They've added value by what they've done, and value's been recognized. And that's a really important measure. But also the other thing I love and I get the fun out of is this industry. There's such a lot of young people with great ideas that actually you can help, materialize those ideas and help them become rich, not just yourself. And it's all about trust and delivery.
I'm going to touch a little bit on the age factor in a little while, but we're going to continue on the theme of money. But I'd like to talk about the P word, if I may. Many fintechs and many challenges of the status quo seem to be built on the promise of an enhanced valuation of their businesses at the next round, rather than the idea of making a profit. Now, you've always said to me, look, it's about making money. But surely there is an alternative to the profit word. Can't profit wait till later?
I think that's a myth. And I think it's one which will be found out in the very near future. Because more and more what you're seeing is companies borrowing more or mortgaging themselves and the founder's future to big investment. Now, if those investments, we're now seeing people investing at 70 times revenue, not 70 times EBITDA. I mean, that's the sort of madness that I think we've now got into. And frankly, it reminds me very much of the year 2000, when we were all walking down Old Broad Street in the city of London thinking, this is easy. It's like taking money off of kids. And, I raised a hell of a lot of money walking down the road, waving a piece of paper that said internet. Unfortunately, I was the last one to list in 2000 before the crash. And some of those companies that were worth billions disappeared overnight. And I think we possibly have got into the mindset that size is everything. No, it's not. It's sustainability and a definite future of profitability that you can plot and point to. And I think that's not been achieved by a large number of the current unicorns. So we'll see.
So,
I mean, be interesting times.
do you get a sense that we're kind of approaching a time where there might be a sort of a judgment day?
Yeah, definitely. As you may or may not know, I'm an investor not only in the payments area but other sectors, and we've seen a lot of the gloss being wiped out of companies because the promises only go for so long. And frankly, people now say, "Well, I'm 4 years old. I'm a bit, I've already become a unicorn." Well, that's easy to become the unicorn. The answer is, can you stay one? And can you demonstrate that what you're doing is actually moving forward towards the P word? Because if it doesn't, sorry, it doesn't exist. That's sometimes somebody wakes up.
Very wise words. So look, but if we wind back all these years, 40 years, what on earth brought you into cards and payments in the first place?
I think it's like most things in life. You find yourself presented with an opportunity, which you then decide to take. Anybody who says, "I plan my life," I look at rather skeptically, because life isn't that easy. If it was, we'd all be, sort of billionaires, and we'd have a plan and we would have worked it. But what happened to me was that originally I started off as an engineer, nothing to do with payments at all. I think that taught me logic, because if you built things that didn't work, it was very obvious. I then moved into sort of product marketing. And when I got into the company, that was a company called Dymo, which you may remember, it went click, 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 put your name on a piece of tape and stick it somewhere.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
They acquired a company called Farrington. And Farrington is those lovely, funny characters on your credit card. And they bought that. They bought it with the belief that because they could emboss a piece of plastic tape, they could emboss cards. So I ended up, I was originally the international marketing director for Dymo, running a payments company that made embossing machines. That introduced me to the world of payments. And also then the company moved forward and started to develop other parts of that chain. I then had the audacity to leave them and start up a business that actually distributed credit card imprinters across Europe. That was a great success. So that took me into payments, but very much in what I call a mechanical environment. That company moved forward to learn about digitalization, because ATMs were coming up everywhere, but nobody had any control over them. So banks were paying NCR and others money to repair them, but they had no idea when they'd broken down. So digitization, or gaining knowledge about serviceability, was a thing. So I got into that. So that's really where I started in payments. And moving into the credit card industry came from the credit card imprinters, because the company I owned reversed into a US Canadian company. And all of a sudden, they started to make plastic cards. Then we started to acquire merchant acquiring businesses, and we ended up with a conglomerate that worked in payments. So I learned a lot. I then started again and started selling, ancillary equipment to the credit card industry. And then came the lovely day when Mr. Maxwell jumped off his yacht, or was pushed, depending on the story. And I ended up buying BPC Ultra Card, which is a credit card manufacturing business, competing with De La Rue in those days. And that company became ID Data. And hence my, sort of moved very much into the payment space. So that was how
So as an engineer, you came from the manufacturing side into payments that way.
Yeah. And I think that was really good in one regard, because I think it gave you the insight of what was practical and what was achievable. And I think, especially if people have been in what I call mechanical engineering, there's a lot of logic to that. You can easily build something that doesn't work. You have to get it wrong.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the artistry is to be able to focus on what right is in terms of building something that's right. And you've certainly done that. I mean, has the industry changed much since you joined it? And in which case, how?
The whole world's changed. I mean, unfortunately, the problem of a long lifespan in the industry means if you had a mind to, you could sit there and look back and talk about the past. I mean, a classic example was the first credit card imprinter order I got was from Barclaycard, and it was a £7 million order. And I never exchanged a piece of paper with them through the whole process. Now,
Wow.
There wasn't an RFI, there wasn't anything. It was me doing a sales job on the marketing department of Barclays because I've been pushed away by the procurement side and selling them the dream that a credit card imprinter could have their brand on it as opposed to being a piece of black metal that went zip zap.
Wow.
So now, I think one of the sad things that I see in business today is too much reliance on process and not enough imagination being applied to the people involved. So I think the whole environment is become much more process and less personal. So you get an RFI, you do it. I say to my guys, don't even bother to respond, because if the company that is sending it out has been approached properly by a creative sales company, they've already set you're benchmarking. You're not actually the chances of you getting a deal are sort of pretty small. So,
do you think some of the joy and the fascination of the industry has been kind of taken out through that process-led approach?
Well, it depends which level you're dealing with. If you're dealing in the sort of fintech startup area, of course, it's very personal because you've got. As I describe it, it's like, you're working with a young team of people who need some help and guidance, and so personality and what you can add to their equation is important. But when you get into tier one environment, it's process, and it's process, I think, in a negative way, because effectively you get decision makers who have no interaction with the true process or a true understanding of what's going on. So I think that's why the big boys suffer. And, when you come to government, you really see it suffer.
But you've always been the kind of the one who applies their creativity to doing things a bit differently. And certainly Contis is an organization you've vertically integrated from the very outset. That was the strategy. You were Credit Card, weren't you, for a little while, and you renamed yourself as Contis. How come that sort of vertically integrated approach gives you guys an edge?
Well, I think Credit Card taught me a lot about the space we're now in, because Credit Card, if you go back, when I acquired it, it was a small team of people relying upon a number of suppliers. It had Newcastle Building Society, which became Wirecard as its bin sponsor. It had Nomad, which is now Fizz, as its processor. It had another company doing this and another company doing that. And frankly, it was like herding cats in a tuna factory. You couldn't make a commitment to a customer with good faith, because these guys all had their own agendas. So in 2010, I can remember the meeting. Was a meeting between myself, a guy called Mike Froman, ex-CTO of Barclaycard, who worked for me, and Barry Fergus, who was actually an ex-international MD for Barclaycard, sitting in a room and saying, this is madness. Every time we do something, somebody screws it up. So what we have to do is own the train set. So I think what we created, and it's been proven to work, is by giving a point of single accountability and true ownership, not bullshit ownership. At the moment, I'm watching some serious bullshit going on in our industry. But we own the components. We are the processor. We are the core banking system. We are the connectivity. We are we are linked to every touch point that we need to be involved in. So when my people talk to a client, they can talk with confidence. And if we say we're going to launch on a date, we will launch on a date. And if we say the price is this, it's that. And that's a big difference. So people have a choice. They can go out and try and get the best package by buying all the bits and putting them together. But what they have there is a great risk that the parties aren't cooperating. And secondly, they haven't got the skills to manage them. So,
Yeah.
so they think they've saved money, but they actually haven't. They've created an environment for potential failure.
Well, it's
So,
obviously worked. It's obviously worked, Peter, because you've stuck with it over a number of years. You've satisfied lots of customers, and you've often said to me, "Yes, we're making steady progress, and we're growing revenues and growing profitability." And now that's been recognised by Solaris, who have just acquired your business. Can you tell us a little bit about the thinking behind that, the background? I mean, anybody who's got a business they want to sell one day would love to hear how you did it and what the tips are.
well, number one, I think we are a bit unique in terms of we are profitable. And, last year our growth was 130%. So, we're not a company that's, we have created a platform that gives, well, you're dealing with trusted people that have a reliable platform, runs at 99.999% availability, does what it says on the can with no bullshit. So that's our true value proposition. But we're also the innovator. And as you know, we've won a large number of awards for being different to the rest of the world. And that equals a valuation that is interesting. Now, we've had obviously the discussions with venture capital, with private equity. But, I hate to say it, I'm 76. So the idea of me reporting to a private equity company just didn't make sense.
By the way, I'm just laughing at the thought of the first board meeting when they'd say, "Peter, where's your report on this, this, and this?" And you'd go, "I'm too busy for all that nonsense. Let's get on with the real work."
Well, you say that, Tony. We actually run like a public company. We do have monthly boards. We do have non-executive directors. And our board pack can be up to 117 pages in depth. So there is a lot of detail because you need that if you're running a highly controlled business. And we are not flying by the seat of our pants. It's highly structured. The team that are in Contis now are all true professionals. So when you're looking for an exit, you've got to find a solution that suits two parties in my mind. In my case, our criteria was very much whatever we do, it's got to continue the mission and believe in our people and give them future opportunity. We had many offers for the company. A lot of those offers equaled, sort of taking the good bits and getting rid of the staff. And we said, no, that's not what we want. So we've ended up with Solaris, which I think is a marriage made in heaven. We complement them completely. We have a totally different approach to the market to them. They are a bank, we're an EMI, and that's very important. And the two coming together equals massive opportunity for the staff of both companies, or the colleagues. We call colleagues. And that means that there's future. You can see careers already, new opportunities. Between the two of us, we're going to take on another 150 people in the next 12 months.
Wow.
So this is, it's because, we are now a unicorn. It's a unicorn company. So, wow. And the difference that, we've said we are number one as banking as a service. There's a few people who've tried to snipe at that, but they can't because we are. Now Solaris and ourselves put together, we're undisputed market leaders. The business and the revenues and the capabilities are second to none. So we have. We have a strong foothold in Europe, and now we're moving into Asia Pacific and CEMEA. So that is going to actually rock the boat big time. So brilliant. So when you look at our team, they can see opportunity. Normally when you talk about merging something with something else, everybody gets panicked. We had both Solaris and ourselves had town halls this week. The reaction of the teams was incredible, and you can always say they've already looked each other up on LinkedIn to see if there's any conflicts. They've all decided no, there's not. It's really great. So I think so the deal from a people perspective, which was key to me, because frankly, at my age, I don't need a lot more money. I've got enough. I've always had enough. I don't wish to have. I've done all the silly things when I was younger. I now just like to enjoy life. So the putting of the companies together is great. And in terms of the money is an acceptable figure that works for both parties. Now, we have enabled Solaris to put forward a very strong argument that we are number one. Now, where before saying, well, we're number one, but the other guy, any investor could look at anything else. So we put that together. Yeah. But more importantly, the mindset is, this is just the start. This is not the end.
So but hold on, Peter. You're a bit like me. I can imagine myself sitting in 15 years' time or so in your shoes, thinking, I'm just starting out. This is just the beginning. But what about you? What are you going to do? I mean, first of all, you're going to spend most of your Sundays cutting the grass. I've never seen anybody with a bloody lawn as big as that one. But what are you going to do?
Only 12 acres.
Yeah. Oh, dear. So what are you going to do?
No, I mean, I've watched people retire, and remember, this is, I've already retired 4 times before and failed miserably. So what I'm looking for from this venture is continued excitement and using my grey matter to make things, move forward. And, I'm an investor in the new vehicle, so that's great.
Super.
Obviously, I work an average of 12 hours a day, including Saturdays and Sundays, which is maybe, the definition of work is not necessarily sitting at a desk, it's thinking, building, communicating. I'm now at a stage where I think, I've got a very strong executive team. Solaris have a strong executive team. Those guys and girls can really drive the business. And where I think my value will come in is to do the things which, again, are disruptive. If you now move into crypto, I remind you, was at the time when both Visa and MasterCard came out. And we convinced Visa to come back in big time through us. Now, we are the largest processor of crypto transactions in the world. People don't know that, but we are. And that was all by taking a very big risk, a calculated risk back, 4 years ago. So I think
that sounds something you're very proud of. And for somebody who's been in the industry over the years, you clearly are proud of achieving that figure. What are the things you're particularly proud of achieving?
Well, if you go back in history, yes, I think getting the first major chip card order in the UK. I got the order from Barclaycard, to deliver some 20 odd million cards in competition with, in those days, Gem Plus and Delarue. And the only difference between the three of us is we'd never made a chip card, but we got the contract. So we won that order. And I have to say, when I walked out of Northampton's headquarters of Barclaycard, I had a mixed feeling, one of joy and one of sheer fear. We solved the problem.
So, I love that honesty. It's brilliant.
Yeah, so that was one. I think the other, obviously, ID Data was behind 2 of the great loyalty programs. We created Tesco Club Card with McLaren and Co. That was a fantastic moment in our life. We then launched Nectar. I mean, the Tesco deal was the first time anybody in the world had delivered 7 million cards in one go. And everybody thinks, oh, it's easy, but it wasn't. It was matching data. We created a database. So very exciting. So I think that was a wonderful time. And I think, when you look across and you say, well, what else? I think the great thing is that, we've managed to create an environment within our company where people can contribute and do things that are exciting and take on the challenge. I love our team because, even though we've got much bigger, remembering that credit card was 3 people when I took it over in Skipton. The people are so much involved with the business and they're thinking about how you can change it. And I suppose the latest one, which is a product that I think has proven our processing capabilities, is what we did in the crypto world, but we've also now done it in stocks and shares and gold and silver, which is the buffer account, where you can have an account with zero funds in it, but you can access money through your crypto exchange by selling coins, or through the stock market by saying, I'll release some of my Apple shares, or gold or silver. And we do that in real time. So you walk to an ATM, you want 500 euros, click, it comes through to our processing platform. We say you haven't got 500 euros. Normally, end of story. We turn around and we say, but you've got a backer. That backer is one of the crypto exchanges, let's say Binance or somebody like that. And we say to them, would you fund this guy? Because you've got his assets. They say yes. They pre-funded us. All happens in under 2 seconds. Now that's excitement. Now that's innovation. Yeah, well, that was one of my great ideas a few years ago, and it's now, alive and well and doing
Brilliant.
Millions of transactions a month. So
hugely satisfying. Satisfying.
So that's the fun of this business. But obviously, the business also has some interesting trends, and that is that right now I am scared for the industry. There's too much bullshit, using that word in the broadest sense of the word. There's too many people promising things they don't have. And that is a disappointment, and we'll end up with legal wrangles. So I think, what we've got to do as an industry is get our act cleaned up, really.
So is that because there's, when you say act cleared up, do you think that's because there are people who are doing things with bad intent, or is because they're doing it because they're incompetent?
Naive, I think, is the word. People
naive,
we are becoming somewhat what I call character centric. People, that guy's great. Well, that guy may be great and may have great vision. The question is that, he, she, or whoever it happens to be, do they have the backing and do they have the capability to deliver what they're talking about? And that's no different, if you like, back to 2000 again. We had people who said, all these things are going to happen. I've got 2 million bums that are signed up to my app. It's all going to happen. Doesn't. But in our area, of course, there's different sectors. If you are a supplier to the industry, or you're a backbone to the industry, as we are, it's no good kidding the buyers that you can do things you can't, because they will lose money, and they will use reputations will be destroyed by people not doing what they should do. So I think
it's quite
reputational risk is going to be one of the big agendas of the future.
Yeah, so I think you're right. It's quite interesting because the last Insights interviewee was Rich Wagner, who set up Cash Plus Bank as it is now, and he's also close to the unicorn valuation and doing very nicely. But he's a bit like you. No bullshit. Think about the profit. Think about the sustainability of the business. And I mentioned to him that Tom Blomfield, who was, if you like, he was a poster child in a way of the challenger bank industry for a little while, and there's all the story of him and Starling and what happened there, and how he took on Monzo. And he also said, was quoted recently as saying, if I'd known the amount of pain and heartache involved in setting up Monzo, I would never have started out. Now, you just said that essentially you're feeling like with the Solaris merger, you're just starting out there. So what are your plans for Contis, and what's your roadmap that you can share with the audience?
Well, the first big one is geographical expansion, which is already taking place. So, we are now attracting a large number of what I call global players. They've suddenly realized that what we have, and I would point out that over 80% of our business comes from competitors. So when people come to us, they've already experienced another life. And one of the things we are now dealing with the size of companies that have a global footprint. So we, Contis, and Solaris will follow it, is looking for that global capability. So Asia Pacific, we are opening up in Australia, Singapore. We haven't publicized it, we're just doing it quietly. When we arrive, when people know we've arrived, it might be a bit too late. So we're doing that. The other area that is in part of our strategy is we've split the Contis Group into 3 divisions. One division is business as usual, which is a regulated end-to-end solution, i.e. you run on our licenses, you run on our technology, and we do all your back office for you. The next is what we now call managed services, which is standalone processing, core banking, KYC as independent technology solutions to companies who are already regulated. And already we have one tier one coming onto that platform, and we have others across Europe. We then have I really love, and it's one which I put a lot of effort into, our financial inclusion team, which is Engage, the credit union community banking product. And again, that has tremendous scope to grow. First of all, we have 150 credit unions in the UK, but we are very much the provider of the final payment mechanism. What we're now doing, and we launched a week ago, is the core back office cloud-based platform, so they can run their business on us. So there's a very big step.
Very nice. There's a lot to keep you busy, Peter. There's a lot to keep you busy.
Yeah. I mean, my job going forward, I think, will be, I'm stepping back to be an advisor because it's only right that the team now take it over. But I will be throwing my rocks into the pool. Let's put it that way. The pool's a ripple. I suppose another area where I'm lucky is I do have, and it's where age does work, is that you can have access to the right people. If you happen to have met Al Kelly 20 years ago, the fact that he's now boss of Visa is just rather convenient. Likewise, if you're used to kicking doors down, when I took ID Data public back in the year 2000, that wonderful year, my chairman was Mike Blackburn, who was the chief executive of the Halifax at the time.
I remember.
Yeah, and Mike did a lovely thing in the FT, which summed it all up. He said, well, where Peter will kick a door down, I just open it, because he had that gravitas and position. So I'm slowly hoping to move towards his position rather than having to boots,
Wonderful. Well, if you were knocking at the door of the EPA's advisory board, and as you know, we've got 16 volunteers, executives who've been voted in by our members to be a representative. What advice would you give them, and where do you think they should focus their efforts?
Well, I think there's two things there. One is, I think regulation is going to be the bane of our lives. And I think regulation, by the way, will be the thing that kills some of the companies, because the cost is going to be colossal. I mean, I
agree.
In the last 6 months, post the Wirecard situation, the FCA has gone into what I call super mode. Many questions. We're very fortunate, and I dare not say it, that we haven't been trodden all over, but there's a lot of answers required. And we're seeing it in Europe even more. And obviously, Solaris has, a BaFin relationship, and we have a Central Bank of Lithuania relationship. And these guys are definitely raising their game, and they are applying. They really want to know, and the big focus is KYC, money laundering, etc.
Yes.
But the other one, which people are ignoring, is resilience, i.e., can you survive as a business, and also is your technology capable of delivering a service to Joe Public that is reliable? And right now, that's going to be a big focus. That equals cost. And I think one of the things that amazes me is that people still think they can have sophisticated payments platforms for nothing. And there's people trying to give them sophisticated payment plans. It doesn't work. So that equals you have very high costs in your business. And if you're not charging enough, there's only one inevitable end. That would be a great feature of the opportunities for the new business, Solaris Contis, going forward, because we have the financial might to acquire. So I think there will be a lot of excitement. I mean, Roland, who's the chief executive of Solaris, great guy, good vision, but he's also surrounded by some very, very clever people, and his investors are really it's the creme de la creme. They're the right.
Well, does sound like a marriage made in heaven. So the final comment, Peter, at the end of what are fascinating, and thank you for being so open and sharing your story. It's been it's been fascinating to hear. If you were, think of the bright young things in Solaris, or think even if you had a graduate who came up to you and said, thinking about following in your footsteps into payments, what would your sort of 2 or 3 points of advice be to a youngster trying to get in, get ahead, get on, and ultimately do what you've done, which is the magic moment of getting out?
Yeah, I think the first is be prepared to work hard, because a lot think they can get there just because they went to university or whatever. Of course, I didn't. I left school at 16, so I came from a relatively poor family. The second is push the envelope, look to do things that are different, and don't be afraid to say what you think, because one of the things that in companies that can make them great is having people who can be speaking out in a constructive way. And the last part is get your life under control. Spend the money when you made it. Don't live the life before you got there, because otherwise all you're doing is creating lots of stress, which means that your core activities will not be productive. So my view is, be honest with yourself, work hard, and don't bullshit again. That word bullshit to me is something I use a lot. Don't give me, tell me the truth. It may be ugly.
Brilliant.
If it's ugly, tell me, because I need to know. Then I can do something about it.
Well, I've got to say, it's a beautiful story to hear. I love hearing all the background. I love hearing your advice and your tips. Thank you very much indeed for sharing it with our membership. I'm delighted to have had a chance after all these years to hear all this insight from you. So as this month's Insight interviewee, Peter Cox, Executive Chair of Contis, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.